Have you ever wondered how the potent synthetic opioid fentanyl became a major player in America's drug overdose epidemic? The story begins with the rise of opioids as a class of drugs, which includes legal prescription painkillers as well as illicit substances like heroin. Fentanyl, originally developed as a prescription drug, is 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine, making it extremely effective for treating severe pain. However, this potency also led to its misuse, and it soon found its way from pharmacies to the streets. In the early stages of the opioid crisis, prescription opioids and heroin were the main drivers. However, the landscape of the crisis drastically changed when fentanyl entered the scene. Its high potency and relatively low cost made it an attractive choice for dealers to lace other drugs with, resulting in a dramatic increase in overdoses. In fact, in recent years, synthetic opioids, primarily fentanyl, have accounted for the majority of overdose deaths in the United States. In 2021, synthetic opioids were involved in 75% of overdose deaths, surpassing 100,000 for the first time. This deadly trend has not been uniform across the country. The lethal combination of fentanyl with stimulants varies by region, with cocaine being more common in the Northeast and methamphetamine in the West and Midwest. This practice of combining opioids and stimulants is not new, but the introduction of fentanyl with its high potency has made it particularly dangerous. The rise of fentanyl has also been facilitated by the international drug trade. The United States has seen a significant influx of fentanyl and its precursors from overseas, particularly from China and Mexico. Despite efforts by the US government to curb this illicit trade, the flow of fentanyl into the country continues. Fentanyl is now the predominant drug involved in overdoses, but it's not the only player in this epidemic. As we delve deeper into this crisis, we'll uncover the rise of another drug, xylazine, and the ongoing efforts to curb this devastating epidemic. But where does all this fentanyl come from? And how does it reach the hands of users? Well, the illegal drug trade plays a significant role in the drug overdose epidemic. Countries like China and Mexico have been identified as major sources of fentanyl. The United States has been grappling with this issue, with President Biden urging Chinese leader Xi Jinping to clamp down on Chinese firms involved in the production and export of this potent drug. Despite these diplomatic efforts, curbing the flow of fentanyl remains an uphill battle. In parallel, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has been cooperating with Mexico, aiming to tighten security screening of investments to reduce national security risks and combat the flow of fentanyl. This multi-country collaboration is seen as a key strategy to mitigate the influx of fentanyl into the U.S. However, even as these efforts unfold, the drug continues to find its way across borders. India, an often overlooked player in the illegal drug trade, supplies precursor products as well as powdered fentanyl to both China and Mexico. Online sales add another layer of complexity to this problem. Despite efforts to curb the international trade of fentanyl, the drug continues to flood into the US, and a new player has entered the scene. Just when it seemed like things couldn't get worse, a new drug, xylazine, has begun to make its mark. Originally used as a sedative for animals, this veterinary tranquilizer has now infiltrated the human drug scene, adding a dark twist to an already grim situation. Xylazine has been found in 1 out of every 9 overdose deaths involving the illicit synthetic opioid, fentanyl, across the nation. In West Virginia, the situation is particularly dire. Xylazine is present in at least half of the needles in areas like Wheeling, and between 15 and 20% of needles used statewide. The effects of xylazine are chilling. It causes deep flesh wounds that can lead to amputations. Patients experience severe withdrawal symptoms, often resistant to treatment with Narcan, a medication commonly used to block the effects of opioids. How did xylazine find its way into the human drug scene? It's a mystery. It could be because it's cheaper or more readily available than other substances, or maybe because it intensifies the effects of fentanyl, making the high more potent. Regardless, xylazine has become the new drug of choice, especially in places already ravaged by the opioid crisis. But this isn't just a local problem. Xylazine made its debut in Puerto Rico and has since spread across the country. Despite efforts by the FDA and DEA to stop imports, it remains easily available from overseas pharmacies. The rise of xylazine has turned an already desperate situation into a crisis of unprecedented proportions. Law enforcement officials and lawmakers are scrambling to respond, issuing warnings and pushing to schedule the drug. The emergence of xylazine has added a new layer of complexity to the already dire situation. The question now is, how will we respond to this new threat? So, where does this leave us now, and what does the future hold? Today, America grapples with a potent drug overdose epidemic, with fentanyl and xylazine playing lead roles. For the first time, overdose deaths have surpassed 100,000 in a single year, with synthetic opioids accounting for 75% of these fatalities. The emergence of xylazine, a livestock tranquilizer in the illicit drug scene, has only intensified the crisis, causing deep flesh wounds and severe withdrawal symptoms. But all is not lost. Efforts are underway to curb the flow of these drugs, with international cooperation playing a crucial role. President Biden's dialogue with Chinese leader Xi Jinping on cracking down on fentanyl production, and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen's discussions with Mexico on strengthening security screening of investments, are steps in the right direction. While the fight against the drug overdose epidemic is far from over, understanding the problem is the first step towards finding a solution. If you or someone you know has been impacted by this epidemic, please share your story or your experience in the comments below.